The Wizard Returns, Chapter 6. Still grumbling, Iris led Hex away from the chaos over a wobbly series of interconnected walkways. The sun had set, and the monkey city was lit by hundreds of glowing yellow balls that floated in the air. "Sunfruit," Iris said, in answer to his unmasked question. "You can eat it if no one remembers to bring you dinner. But then you won't have a light." Hex soon lost any sense of direction. If he wanted to find his way out of here again, he wouldn't be able to do it without the monkey's help. Finally, Iris stopped at a low hut, more roughly built than others they'd passed, but still as neatly constructed as a ship. He followed her inside in a little room lit by another, smaller sunfruit. The room was sparsely furnished, with just a hammock and a single table and chair, but everything was tidy and clean. Iris rang a little bell shaped like a banana, and in a few minutes another monkey dressed in a butler's outfit brought him a tray of bananas. Hex almost groaned out loud. At the very corner of the tray was a small, steaming bowl. "Oatmeal for you, sir," the butler said politely, as Iris helped herself to several bunches of banana. "Oatmeal?" Hex wondered aloud, as the butler bowed and left him. "For dinner?" "Humans love oatmeal," Iris said authoritatively. Hex decided not to argue. "What's going on out there?" he asked, sinking down into a hammock to eat his oatmeal, which was burnt. Iris hovered awkwardly for a minute, still chewing, and then frowned and settled into the chair. "The monkeys are split," she said heavily, swallowing the last of her banana. "Before Dorothy," there was that name again, "came back to Oz, all the monkeys had wings." She flapped her arms as if to demonstrate. "We flew all over Oz, as we pleased when Ozma ruled. But then Ozma took over, and Ozma went, well, wherever she is. Our wings have always been vulnerable to magic. We've been enslaved by one ruler after another, including that cursed wizard." Wizard, Hex thought. Was that me? Was that what I remembered in the Queen's palace? He shifted uncomfortably, but Iris didn't notice. "This time," she continued, "some of us decided losing our wings was worth our freedom. We're in the queendom of the wingless ones, the last free monkeys in Oz." Iris puffed her chest proudly, and then her expression sank again. "But some of the monkeys didn't want to be free anymore. They think it's better to side with Dorothy." Iris spat the name out as if it were a curse. "And that Dorothy's creepily sidekick, the Scarecrow, can make us new wings. They say Dorothy is on our side and wouldn't make us her slaves again. As if. Even back when she first came to Oz, all she did was make us fly around like we were some kind of taxi service. But now that she's returned, she's downright evil." Iris sighed. "The rebels have been causing all kinds of trouble in the Queendom. Sabotage, arson, waylaying supplies. Some of the poorest monkeys are going hungry. I know that human-loving, no offense, traitor Quentin is behind the rebels, and I can prove it too. I've been tracking the Queen's accounts with the data management system I developed, and by comparing royal experience, I can prove that Quentin is siphoning food and supplies from all of our imports," she said excitedly. "Only he's the Chancellor, and I'm just a lowly guard. I can't say anything against him the Queen will believe." "Not even with all your data?" Hex asked. She sighed again. "No one else understands double-entry accounting. Unless you know what the data means, it's just a bunch of meaningless numbers, and, well, the Queen is very wise, of course, but she doesn't think of my work as serious," Iris said quietly. "No one does. They all think I'm just young and silly. I'm the only one of the monkeys who's even interested in numbers, and I can't make them see how important data management is." "But you are young and silly," Hex thought. "I wouldn't take you seriously either if I were the Queen." Iris seemed to have a good heart, but she couldn't possibly think her endless spreadsheets would have any impact on the Queen's decisions. She wasn't even a particularly effective guard. Was he meant to stop Quentin? Is this how... "I don't have any other proof," Iris was saying. "And Quentin knows that I can't do anything to stop him because no one else will listen to me." Her brown eyes filled with tears. "The monkeys are going to destroy themselves, and I can't do a thing to stop it," she sobbed. She was so distraught that Hex forgot a few moments ago she'd been clamoring for his execution. He patted her awkwardly on the back, and she swept heavily into his shoulders. "I just so much," she wailed, her runny nose dripping over her shirt. "I want the monkeys to be happy." "The only way to end this unrest is to prove he's at the heart of it. And I can't do anything." There, Hex murmured, continuing to pat her gently as she erupted into a damp hiccuping sobs. "Why don't we go to the Queen in the morning and you can convince her you're right? I'm sure you can figure something out. She's very clever. You're very clever." But his mind was racing. Pete had said he was being tested. Was that why he'd been brought here? And if it was, why was he supposed to do? Convince the monkeys to side with Dorothy? It was hard to take the monkeys seriously, but that Quentin had still seemed like a nasty piece of work. Iris snuffled and blew her nose on her sleeve. "I should be Lulu's advisor, not Quentin," Iris hiccuped furiously. "He's a traitor, and fraud. Do you really think I can convince the Queen?" Her lower lip quivered, and she looked dangerously close to bursting into tears again. Hex hastily handed her a banana. "Of course," he said firmly, though he had no idea. "You've already convinced me, and I'm a total stranger." This made no sense at all, but seemed to reassure Iris. "You're right," she said more confidently. "First thing in the morning I'll tell her. Suddenly another loud explosion went off in the distance. Hex and Iris hurried outside, peering over the balcony of the guest hut. Below them, a small, seething group of monkeys battled each other furiously on the forest floor, their fight lit by more sunfruit. Monkeys in velvet suits that matched Iris's, presumably the Queen's guard, carried prisoners tightly wrapped in banana leaves away from the battlefield, while more suited monkeys whacked the upstarts with bananas. It all started with peaceful protests, but now we're on the verge of an all-out civil war, Iris said, her eyes filling with tears again. "And it's all Quentin's fault. If he wasn't spreading lies, they'd realize siding with Dorothy means death. Or worse." She sighed heavily. "It's been a long day, and I can't do anything until the morning. You might as well get some rest." Iris sat on the table again, apparently taking her guard duty seriously enough to watch over Hex as he slept. He tried to get comfortable on the swaying hammock, at last falling into a fitful sleep. A strange, sonorous noise woke him later in the night, and he sat up in confusion. Iris had fallen asleep on the table, her shoulders hunched in defeat, and the room echoed with her snores. Hex sighed and lay back on the hammock again, waiting for dawn.